All right. Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining us this morning for our webinar titled Out of the Silo, A Tale of Courage. Today, I'm happy to be joined by Brown & Caldwell's John Rosendahl. John is a senior analyst for Brown & Caldwell. He specializes in IT master planning, IT project management, and business intelligence. And today, we're going to focus the presentation mainly around the educational aspects of the silo effect. John's going to be speaking for about 30 to 35 minutes. Followed by that, I'm going to jump in and present Lightwater's water well technology and just a few scenarios that are very specific to the silo effect. And then we're going to be fielding questions and answers. So just to do a bit of housekeeping right now, everybody is currently in muted mode just to seamlessly go through the webinar. In the course of the webinar, if you have any questions, what you can do is look to the control panel at the right of your screen. There's a collapsible menu called Questions. There you can open that item and type your question in, and I'll be able to see those in real time. What I will be doing is actually recording those questions, and when we get to the end of the webinar, I'll be directing those either to John or I'll field those myself. If at any time there is some sort of audio or visual problem, please also refer to the control panel where you can click under your name, under the attendees, where you can say raise your hand. I will be able to view your hand raised. We'll stop and make sure that we get things fixed up for you right then. Between the two presentations, there will be a slight lag time while John transfers the visual portion over to me. I'm sitting in a different area, so please bear with us on that. So now we're ready to begin, and I'm going to be passing the audio and visual portion over to John. So John, take it away.
Well, welcome, everyone. As Noah said, a lot of the work that we do with our clients is IT master planning. And what we see in a lot of the organizations that we work with is that a major issue they have is their ability to communicate between departments and between individuals. And our utility clients aren't the only ones that are experiencing this sort of thing. We see articles in Forbes, in Fast Company. In doing research for this presentation, I even saw an article by someone that was in the Baptist Church. And every one of them was talking about silos, how they are affecting their organization, and the work that they're doing to try to mitigate the damage that silos are causing to their organization. And with all of this press that silos have gotten, I'm sure everyone has a relatively intuitive understanding of what exactly a silo is. But I wanted to provide a real definition for it so that we could be sure that we were all really on the same page. And in this particular case, we're going to go with this definition for silos. Silos refer to the vertical organization of people and resources. And generally, if you've gotten to the point where you're talking about a silo rather than your boss or your department, which are other aspects of a vertical organization, if you've gotten to that point, then you are talking about how that vertical structure hinders communication and resource sharing across the organization. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about, do a little investigation into what silos are and why they're caused, starting with the premise that silos are really the natural result of hierarchical organizational structures. But just because they're natural, that doesn't mean they're good, because when they're left alone, they will form barriers that will impede the operations of your organization. But we can't do away with silos. We depend on that hierarchical organizational structure too much to just flatten the entire organization. And so what we need to do is find ways to eliminate the harm caused by the silos rather than the silos themselves. And it can be done by talking to each other, creating aligned priorities, enable collective communication and action, and making sure that is networked across every single part of your organization. And we've got an ally in this fight, and that's information technology, because information technology solutions will enable and support networked operations throughout every part of your organization. So that's the summary of what we're going to talk to today. So if you need to drop off, you can now, but you might want to see Noah's presentation as well. So what does organizations look like? What do silos look like in organizations? Now, when we're trying to create cross-functional activities and trying to network our organization, we see that people have barriers to working together. Maybe it's not in their profit and loss statement, it's not in the objectives that roll up to them, or they just don't have the time or bandwidth to help other parts of the organization. And we have that because there's two types of people that are in siloed organizations. There are organizations that you might have a supervisor, which is a very good indicator that you're in a siloed organization. You also could be a supervisor, and that's the other good indication that you're in a siloed organization. And that's because silos are natural characteristics of hierarchical organizations. As you work through a hierarchical organizational structure, the utility manager has this really great breadth of vision of all the operations of the utility, from the customer service representatives to the field crews to the laboratory. He's really looking at every single aspect of the utility, but he's not really looking deeply. He's not doing everyday tasks because he's the utility manager. As you drop down further within the organization, to operations, to field crews, each one of those departments and divisions are going to have less breadth of vision. They're going to be concentrating more on their immediate issues, and they're going to have a greater depth of vision, specializing in that technical area in order to provide, a good technical solution to the problems the utility faces. And that's a really good thing about the hierarchical structure, is it allows people to specialize and it allows people to coordinate their activities. But since people are only really looking at their particular area, it causes some very predictable problems. One of the problems that we see is a lack of information flow between departments. I'm sure that all of you have called in maybe to the phone company and with an issue. The customer service representative asks for your account number, determines that they need to transfer you over to a different department, and the first thing that other department asks for is your account number, because they don't have the integrated systems to bring the information that came with the first call into that second call. There's no information flow between the two departments. There's also a lack of activity coordination. What you'll see, this happens a lot in utilities. One of the types of systems that we work with are program management systems. And in those program management systems, one of the major uses that people have for that is to make sure that when they're replacing a main, they're not doing it 2 weeks after that street just got paved. But in order to have that activity coordination, you really have to break down the barriers between streets and the utility. You also see misaligned priorities. Every single person, every organization is completely convinced that their activities are critical to the performance of their company. And in a way, they're right, but also in a way, you've got core activities that are really, really important, and then you've got other activities that are really supposed to support those activities. But since there's a hierarchical organizational structure, people that are in supporting activities may not be able to see how the work that they do really works in context with the whole organization. You also see communication cutoffs. The one where we see this the most is when people call a utility with complaints. You will see that the customer service representative may even open the CMS to create a ticket to send out a work crew to a certain area. However, they never receive notification from the CMS that that work order has been closed, and then they can't inform the customer that work's been done. And what you'll see is a customer service representative spending a lot of time just refreshing the list of open work orders to determine whether or not the work orders that they care about have been closed or not. And cumulatively, all of this really results in a lack of trust within the organization. Because when information's not flowing freely, when people aren't aligned in their activities, and communication isn't happening as well as it can be, you start to not really trust the people that you're working with in other departments. You're not trusting them to get the job done. You're not trusting them to really be helping you. And that just creates that much more friction in your organization. We'll see cases where someone will make a copy of every single thing they send to another department just in case, because they're pretty sure that department's going to lose it. Things like that, where they're causing a lot of work, not to provide value, but because they don't trust the people around them. And that's a lot of organizational friction right there. So obviously the thing to do is to get rid of all these silos, right? We don't need them. And if you talk to some free market economists, they're really surprised that organizations and corporations have gained as much prominence as they have, because really hierarchy is a poor signaling system. It allows for egos to get involved, and it doesn't really give you a good idea as to the value and priorities of your work. And with some of the new internet technologies out there, people are saying, no, this hierarchical structure is fundamentally flawed and must be done away with. And one organization has done that, and that's Valve. Valve is probably the most over-case studied organization I know of. It's because they're a software firm. They've got they're worth about $250 billion, and they have 400 employees. They also happen to post their handbook online. There's the link for you if you'd like to look at it yourself. And from everything that I hear, that employee handbook is true. And in it states, we don't have any management. Nobody reports to anyone else. We do have a founder and president, but even he isn't your manager. And they really support within that organization self-directed work where, if you come up with an idea, you can get some people to work on it with you. You can ship that product without getting it approved or going through any sort of hierarchy. They don't like people to be in continuous positions of authority. And that works really well for Valve. They're an extremely successful company. But there's a couple aspects of the business that Valve is in that enables them to be successful in this model. The first aspect is that they're really in a hits-based industry where they don't need to do well Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. They need to send out one product every couple of years that makes them tons and tons of money. At the same time, they're also in a very profitable industry, and that allows them to hire the very best people and to be very careful and methodical with their hiring process, because they feel that everyone that they hire is really the CEO of the company, so they put that much effort into every hire they make. The fact that they can pay well above market really helps them out there. Those are not aspects of a utility. One of the most important things for a utility to be is predictable. You need to have water or wastewater treatment every single day, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. You can't lose water because someone decided there was going to be a neat project they needed to work on for a week. And things need to be repeatable. Maintenance processes have to be consistent. You have to make sure that things are done the same way for the same cost. Part of that is because utility rate structures are set well in advance. And you have to be able to create a solid financial and operational plan while knowing that everything that utility does, it's just too big of a topic to think about. You need to be able to push planning down into the division, into the department. You also need to have really clear channels for accountability within the utility. You need to understand that when there's a problem, who caused that problem, and who do we have that can fix it. We need clear lines for advancement, where if you're an operator 1, the next position for you is probably an operator 2. and that helps with the management of the organization. And finally, there's no way to put a soft part about it. A lot of employees, seasonal employees specifically, are not really ready to be in a position where they can run the entire organization for a few days. Utility employees and consulting employees, most employees are less than perfect. We can't all afford to take the absolute cream of the crop. So if we have all these problems that are caused by silos, but they're a natural outbreak of a hierarchical organizational structure that we depend on to have predictable, repeatable operations, and that's really our core mission, we need to find ways to make silos work within our organization. And the way that we're going to do that is to eliminate the problems caused by the silos, not the silos themselves. And so there's a couple steps to do that. We have to find ways to incite change within an organization. We need to help everyone build a shared, holistic view of the utility and its goals, objectives, and processes. We need to create networks between our employees so that they have lines of communication that allow them to have that breadth of vision in addition to their depth of vision. We need to identify and remove barriers that are hindering communication. And we need to free the knowledge within the organization. When we're talking about mitigating the harm from silos, a lot of the change in this case really needs to start at the top, or if not at the top, somewhere near the top of the middle, because there needs to be some sort of executive sponsorship to enable this sort of change. And it's up to the people at the top of the organization to really start a dialogue between other people at the top of the organization and between people that are lower in the organization, and just start them talking. And the reason to have that dialogue is to really start to build a shared vision of one utility where everyone is working for the same goals, the same objectives. It's kind of like the mission statement process that I'm sure some of you have been through. And while I don't think that mission statements in themselves are always very useful, I think that the conversations that people have to determine what the objectives are to run that business, what is the vision of this business, how should it work, I think that's a really valuable discussion, a lot more than the product that's created. And then starting to communicate that vision throughout the utility and helping people to expand the vision, saying, you're not just a customer service representative. You are part of the process of satisfying our customers and delivering water. And that's a very important, subtle but important change in the way that people look at their role within the organization. As I said before, a lot of the work that we do is IT master planning. And we take what is called an enterprise architecture approach to our master planning. And in that enterprise architecture approach, we look at the strategic direction of the utility, the business architecture, the systems architecture, and the technology architecture. And honestly, we spend a lot more time looking at the business architecture than anything else, because we feel that the reason for the technology is to support the business. So we conduct a lot of workshops where we bring in all the different people that are involved in a process in different departments and have them talk about that process from start to finish. And what we find is that just through those conversations, we help to build a more holistic view of each step in the process, so that when a field service worker comes to the client's site, he knows what the customer service representative went through to get him there. He understands, after having this conversation, he understands how the work that he does supports the customer service representative, and that helps them make better decisions that support their activity in the context of the organization as a whole. By building this holistic view, creating documentation or just an oral history of the way that the organization works, you're going to have people start to be able to expand the breadth of vision and to be work in a more collaborative manner. And the next step is to create networks between the different parts of your organization. What you'll see is that through your building of a holistic view, when you have those communications between those departments linger, the people that were involved in creating those business process maps, they continue to talk to each other, and that facilitates operations in an interesting way. They become conduits for information between departments. And it's up to us, or up to you, to start to foster those connections through long-term formal processes. We've seen a lot of different ways that organizations achieve this. Some organizations we've worked with have created a lean team that really looks at ways in a cross-functional way of improving operations within the utility. We've seen people get the same sort of value by creating an IT governance group. And that IT governance group involves people from different parts of the organization in order to make good IT decisions. And in doing that, they're talking to each other about the processes that they're working in. We've seen some process mapping groups where there's one group of rotating people that starts to work on just defining what those processes are and keeping the process maps updated within the organization. We've also seen a leadership growth group where people that are not high up in the organization but look like they're promising employees are brought to specialized training and specialized events where they can share knowledge with each other, start to get to know people in other departments, and foster that networking between everyone. And that becomes a really good framework to break down those barriers. And there's a lot of barriers to break down. You know, we need to start, once you have the network and the framework to breaking down those barriers, people are going to start chafing against them. And we can start removing lack of information flow by integrating systems that allow information to flow more freely. Or perhaps just having the right phone number in your hand so that you can make the right call to the right person so that you can facilitate information flow that way. Coordinating activities by communication, planning things together, just being aware of what people are doing around you. Aligning priorities through that shared vision, making sure, understanding not only what your specific group or department's doing, but understanding how achieving the goals of your department rolls up into the goals of the entire organization. And having some organizational goals that supersede all of the other goals. It's not good if you cover all of your purchasing metrics if you didn't have water for 3 days or issued a boil water notice. Finding those communication cutoffs and creating new avenues for communication and fixing that lack of trust. There's nothing that I've found that improves trust between people more than meeting face-to-face and talking about what they're doing. It doesn't take trust falls or really big organizational, coordinators or anything. If you just get people to talk to each other face-to-face, they're going to start trusting each other a little bit more. The final thing is to free the knowledge within your organization. And this is an ally you have in information technology because information itself, it's gregarious. It wants to make friends with other bits of information. If you ever see some of the copyright things in the United States, you see that people saying information just wants to be free. It wants to be distributed. That's kind of the nature of information on networked systems. And no matter how different different sources of information are, they still can be integrated if they have any values that are in common. And that allows you to get a lot more knowledge and power out of your information than you'd have with it being separate. You see that where we see people, if you look at the Smart Cities initiative or a lot of the business intelligence initiatives, that's really kind of the premise, is that by taking different pieces of information and correlating them together, you can gain new knowledge out of that information that you wouldn't have before. Not only can you gain more knowledge out of that information, but it's also going to weaken the barriers between different parts of your organization, because everyone's going to have a full vision of everything that's going on in the organization. And that's really going to help facilitate communication. And that's something that's really important. You know, technology today, technology always has had a great role in facilitating conversations. From the fireside chats back on radios like this to Facebook and television media and email and instant messaging, all these technologies have been created that help us talk to each other a little bit better, talk to a wider audience, share information more freely. And that's one of the major roles that technology has had in the last 20 or 30 years. And it's getting more of that. It's really pushing more towards that as we're integrating systems and creating new avenues for communication. At the same time, we don't want to look for a technical solution to every problem. Simply installing a new business intelligence system isn't going to help your organization work together. SAP doesn't improve your organization's purchasing ability. It's not going to help your CMS talk to your purchasing folks. You need to have organizational solutions on top of it. You need to have better communication within your organization. You need to have leaner work processes, find out ways to work better. You need to find sources of high quality data, make sure that the data that you have is high quality. That's not a technical problem, that's really a process issue. And then share goals and objectives throughout your organization. At the same time, technology can support new work practices. So if you have communication issues within your organization, you can look towards system integration. You can look towards instant messaging and email to help email for every single employee, to help people have avenues for communication. You can facilitate leaner work processes by understanding the work that's performed, but also augmenting the people that you have through automated processes, perhaps mobile technology so people have the data they need when they need it. And that also rolls into higher quality data. A lot of data quality issues, besides being process-based, are also the result of transcription, entering in the same piece of data multiple times. Eventually it gets corrupted. Or just tasks that could be automated. It could be completely computer handled, and then you wouldn't have any data quality issues with people misfiling things like that. Finally, we've got performance dashboards, which will help you communicate not only the goals and objectives in your organization, but also help give you a better idea as to how your organization's doing in achieving those goals. Understanding, it's pretty easy for a department manager to understand how he's doing on his specific metrics. It takes a lot more communication and usually something like a performance dashboard to help that department manager understand how the entire organization is doing as a whole and how he's affecting the performance of the organization as a whole. We have a lot of technological solutions in order to help facilitate this communication, in order to make things better for utilities. We see, there's enterprise software systems. The great thing about SAP is it doesn't need to be integrated with everything else because it is everything else. You don't have to worry about your CMS talking to your purchasing system. It's the same system. At the same time, a lot of organizations have a lot of existing software. They're looking for system integration standpoints, from a system integration standpoint, and keep sticking with that best of breed approach. Some people will use a point-to-point integration, making system A talk to system B for a specific task. Other organizations will go for more of a service-oriented architecture, and that's kind of the standard way of doing system integration right now, where you create a single bus that allows different systems to share messages with each other. At the same time, what we see with a lot of utilities is it's not so much actions, actions between systems that they're worried about coordinating. It's really data collection and reporting. And that's where data warehouses and business intelligence come in. Systems that allow you to take information from disparate systems and then using that information to create reports about a lot of different parts of your organization. Finally, we have system overlays or workflow management software. And Whitewater is a great, the Whitewater water wall is a great example of this type of software. And this is software that really supports operation across business processes, managing different portions of the workflow in a coordinated way across systems and providing the right information to the right people at the right time. And so that's the talk for today. The takeaways I hope you found were that silos exist. They're the natural result of hierarchical organizational structures. And if we leave them alone, they're going to form barriers that are going to impede your organization. And the key is to eliminate the harm caused by silos, not necessarily the silos themselves. And this can be done by aligning priorities, enabling collective communication action throughout every part of your organization, moving to a more networked approach. And there are IT solutions available that will really help enable and support these collective operations.